All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to my panic attack. Those of you that don't know, I have multiple chronic anxiety disorders, and they cause me to have panic attacks a lot. Like multiple times a day, sometimes, like the one I've been having today, lasting all to the day. Um, I've become exceptionally good at hiding the most of the most of the physical symptoms. Um, and this is from years and years and years of effectively repression, because I was effectively told it was my fault I was having these panic attacks, and I assumed that I would be punished if people found out that I was having them. Um, uh, that's the lovely thing about anxiety. One of the things I've learned as a healthy coping method for dealing with it is I create things. So sometimes I create new classes for D&D, or maybe I'll make a map or write some lore, or I do something like this, or I make a video. So that's what this is. This is me trying to deal with a panic attack. If I sound unhinged or anything in this, it's because I am right now. So that being said, I have two topics that I've been thinking about recently that I want to make a video about anyways, and because I haven't been able to concentrate on anything all day, figured what the hell let's give it a shot. So first things first, there is and I'm actually going to look them up very briefly here. Okay. There is a person named William S.R.D. I'm actually going to have a link to a video they made recently, um, because the video itself is very, very well done. And made me irrationally upset. And when I say irrationally upset, I mean as soon as I got upset about it, I knew that it there was no reason for me to be upset. The feeling of anger and kind of dismissiveness is not being generated by any sort of logical thing. This is just a gut reaction built into my screwed up, messed up brain, and has nothing to do with William S.R.D. or with the frankly really really well done video that he made. But the reason it made me irrationally angry is because Dale Kingsmill, whom is someone that I absolutely adore. I've had the pleasure of actually DMing for her in an 8 hour long game that I did years and years and years ago now. And we communicate with each other every so often. She's wonderful. And I've watched her since the Geek and Sundry vlogger search. I've been a fan of hers since then. I think she's a phenomenal person. Well, she retweeted something that William tweeted, which was just a link to his video. And the video itself is. I'm going to bring it up here so I can actually. There we go. The Critter's Guide to D&D YouTube. And so. What it is he's basically talking about how Critical Role has a brand new season that just started, and there's probably quite a few people that are just getting into Critical Role, or maybe coming back to Critical Role, kind of like me, where I dropped out of Campaign 2 around episode, I think 150 is when I dropped out of Campaign 2, because I just couldn't follow it anymore. So a lot of people are coming back to the game now, and there's new people that are coming in, and so they created this really really great little guide to different YouTube channels that are based in kind of the D&D world. Uh, and on them are channels such as Matt Colville. You, if you would watch my content, you should already know I'm very familiar with Matt Colville. I think he's a great guy. I just disagree with him on a much more regular basis than I really should. Seen his experience is so much greater than mine. But yeah, Matt Colville is a brilliant, brilliant dungeon master and writer and things like that. So Matt Colville's on there. Dale is on there. There's some other ones that I have watched things. I don't subscribe to a lot of these because I get overwhelmed really quickly. But things like David Chappie, How to Be a Great GM. Some of the Deerstalker Pictures is another one that I catch every so often. They're really funny. What was it? Crit Crab. Other things. Just all these different D&D YouTube shows. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with his list. There's a few creators on there that I don't quite enjoy as much for one reason or another, and I don't think that means that they shouldn't be on the list. But were I to make a similar list, they would not be included. And that's perfectly all right. Different people have different tastes, and different people have different opinions about what is kind of the pinnacle cream of the crop and what isn't. But the thing that made me irrationally angry is I'm not on the list. Now, for those of you that will watch my channel, you can probably guess why I'm not on the list. I have less than 500 subscribers. Most of my videos now are getting double-digit views, which for me is a really big deal, and I'm very thankful for that. But until, I want to say maybe 6 months to a year ago, most of my videos got single-digit views. I am just not a very big YouTuber. Combine that with the fact that the quality of my videos is not up to the standard that these other videos are. These other videos, other than people like Matt, but because to be blunt, he's earned not having to edit his videos with his experience. But most of these are edited. A lot of them are scripted, and they're significantly more polished than anything that I do. I use a relatively cheap camera. I mean, my webcam is like 3 or 4 years old, and I think I paid $100 for it. I might have gotten it on sale for $70. So it's not a phenomenally great camera. My microphone is an intermediate microphone. I don't edit anything. I don't script anything. And oh yeah, I ramble a lot. Not to mention things like the stutter and everything like that. I am just not nearly as polished as any of these other channels. I used to be. My disability has made that just an unachievable goal for me currently. Maybe one day I'll be able to get back there. Right now I just physically can't. So that makes sense. Almost to the point of me going, well, why in the world would you be on it? And this is where a bit of my own ego and pride kind of gets in the way of facts. And the fact of the matter is, I personally consider myself to be on equal footing as a lot of these other people. Like I said, I have the utmost respect for Matt Colville. And I believe he's a brilliant writer and dungeon master and YouTuber and everything like that. But simply because I have a lot of respect for him does not mean that I don't think that I may not have as much physical experience, and I'll get into this a little later in the video. But I think my knowledge of Dungeons and Dragons, specifically 5th edition, is on par with anything that Matt Colville could come up with. To a point. Again, Matt has existed in the D&D space significantly longer than I have. He's physically played a lot more systems than I have. So I would not in any way, shape, or form try to claim, I'm a better DM or anything. No, we're different to the DMs, to be blunt. But I think my knowledge of D&D is at his level. And the same is true about Dale. I believe Matt Colville has has a lot of respect for Dale. He has specifically singled her out on quite a few occasions, going, "Wow, what this woman is doing is really, really wonderful and amazing." He respects her enough that he actually invited her to play in his 4th edition game that he runs every so often, which is a blast to watch. 4th edition, in my personal opinion, 4th edition is by far the most fun D&D to watch. Playing it, I still prefer 5th edition. But watching the D&D, there's nothing better than a 4E game. Everything is over the top. The powers are super crazy. The different classes and specialties and things like that are nuts. There's tons of different weapons and magic items, and everything is just so interesting. And then you get Paragon Paths and Epic Destinies, and you can just create these really entertaining, larger-than-life characters. It's what 4th edition did great. But getting back to the topic, I personally believe, knowledge-wise, of D&D 5th edition specifically, I'm not quite as knowledgeable about 4th, and definitely not 3rd, 2nd, and that. I know of them relatively well, but their knowledge, or at least Matt's knowledge, I don't know about Dale, would absolutely destroy me. But as far as 5th edition is concerned, I consider myself on the same level as them, and a lot of these other like how to play kind of channels, like the Dungeon Dudes, I think is one of them. Here's a bunch of different channels that I watch, and I personally believe that I intellectually and through my knowledge of D&D, I am on the same level as they are, but due to all the things I talked about before, the quality of my videos, my appearance itself, my own tech, the fact that my upload schedule has always been rough and weird, and I don't do what I need to do to get big on YouTube. I wasn't even considered. And again, this is not a dig against William. There was no reason for him to know I exist. Again, I'm a very tiny channel. But it really kind of hit home for me, because I've been getting a little bit bigger. I've been averaging more views. I've been getting more interactions. My subscriptions have been increasing fairly steadily. And I've had a few people that have said, "Wow, D&D Deep Dive is one of," and this, full disclosure, I am quoting someone that said this to me. I did not tell them to say this. They specifically said D&D Deep Dive is one of the greatest D&D shows on YouTube, and it really should be much bigger than it actually is. And so, yeah, and I personally believe that. I think that the D&D Deep Dive, well, it could be streamlined, and if I was to script and if I was to edit and do things like that, it could probably be a lot bigger, but I just physically don't have that capability due to my disabilities. But I think even in the situation it is in right now, I think it should be bigger than it is. I think it is a really, really good quality product. It doesn't look as pretty as most things on YouTube do. But I think the information that I get in there is really good quality. And the way I explain it, while yes, it's a little long-winded, it's long-winded on purpose. The different anecdotes and things like that I to talk about when I do this all have a purpose. And all of that comes from years and years and years of training. that I used to do in retail and in management and in a bunch of other fields as well. I learned a very specific style of training that I've made my own, and it involves being a little long winded. But it's incredibly effective. The people that I train retain their knowledge really, really well. And I used to brag, but back when I was working in retail, I think I had 10 or 11 people in the time that I worked for one company. I had 10 or 11 associates that were promoted to management positions that I personally trained to get into management. I myself personally trained, I think, 3 or 4 different managers while I was just with this one company. So I had a bit of a claim to fame. And I had things like district managers that would swear by my training methods. So I know what I'm doing. And so when I watched his video, I made little jokes about it because it's how I deal with emotions that I know are not justified and are 100% irrational. Is I will make jokes about them to try and not only diffuse the situation in my own brain, but also so that I can deal with other people. I use comedy a lot to build relationships with people, and so William made this brilliant video, and I was really upset that I wasn't a part of it. And William has been absolutely brilliant. Like I made my little joke. I'll read the comment I put on there. I said, sure, Critter's Guide to D&D YouTube that doesn't include a critter that has actually showed up on Critical Role and made the cast cry. Episode 50 timestamp 5 hours, 2 minutes, 35 seconds on Geek and Sundry's YouTube vid of it. And yes, I am definitely bragging because I freaked out when Matt said my name live on air. Lol. I see how it is. Jokes aside, as soon as I saw this, I glanced through the timestamps just to see who did show up. And wow, almost everyone I went, oh yeah, I know them. I watch content from most of these channels, sometimes in preparation for my own content I make. So well done. Very well curated, aside from forgetting my D&D deep dives, of course. And quality is far above anything I create. And William was kind enough to favorite it, and he commented to me, and then I quote tweeted him on Twitter to kind of spread the message of his video and get my own little digs in there. And he followed me on Twitter, and he said he put me on a list. He's a really great guy. This is nothing to do with William doing anything wrong. There was absolutely no reason that they should have been aware of me. I'm not that big, but I want to be. I want to be someone that if somebody is making a guide like this, that I'm one of the people that they think of. Years ago, back in early Critical Role time, again, I showed up. I showed up physically during one of the Critmases. For those of you that are new to Critical Role, they used to do this thing every so often called Critmas, where they would just open all the gifts that they got. They now can't do that because they get so many. But it used to be a fairly regular thing. And for the 50th episode, I actually sent them a special gift. And I sent a video along with it that Lucas, who was running the Twitch channel at the time, was able to play for them. And I did make them cry. And in happiness, I wasn't mean, but I said some very wonderful, touching things. And Matt talked about how he'd watched my own games that I streamed. He said I was a great DM. And Leon mentioned that I was there from the first month. I was actually there on the very first episode because it was, I think, the day after my birthday. And you can actually see my comments because I used to have chat go on screen. So if you watch the first episode, you can actually see my comments. He called me an OG critter, and it was a really, really big deal. And then for 2 years, I ran the Critters and Team Human 48-hour D&D stream, which was basically, again, Critters and Team Human would play D&D for 48 hours straight and raise money for Extra Life. And it was something that was a really powerful, positive movement for it. I think over the 2 years I did it, we raised it was either just under or just over $7,000. And I was super, super proud of what we did. So way back then, I was a big part of the Critter community. I knew all the mods on the channel. Anytime Critters were talked about, I was part of that circle. But as it got bigger and I got sicker and my disabilities got significantly worse, I had to step back. And so most Critters have no idea who I am. And going from someone where multiple members of the main cast recognized my name, had watched the things I had done, and had had conversations with me, to someone that nobody knows about, is a bit of a hit. Especially for someone like me that struggles with abandonment issues and loneliness and the things like that due to my mental health. It's just it's something that hurts every time I look at stuff happening in the Critters community, and I am not given a first, second, third, fourth, 27th thought about it, despite the fact that I'm still very much into it. Like I said, at one point, I think I can share this. At one point, I had a standing invitation to come to a taping. This was a long time ago, before they realized that inviting random fans to the studio maybe wasn't the greatest idea in the world. But I had a standing invitation to come watch a taping. I sincerely expect that no longer is the case. And that's perfectly fine. I couldn't do it if I had a standing invitation. I can't leave my basement, much less travel cross country. I had a standing invite to actually appear on the Friday night stream on Geek and Sundry for a little bit. I knew all the hosts pretty well. Some of us got to the point where we were on a first name basis. Yeah, I was a huge part. I've even had conversations with some of the behind the scenes people. Rachel Romero, their marketing head, and I have had a few conversations, and I think she's brilliant and wonderful. And yeah, so it's this weird thing that I'm not a part of something that I put so much of my life into and had a big impact. I have no idea if Matt or Marisha still have the medal that I sent them. I would hope they do. But at that point, that was a really big deal. And I knew most of the behind the scenes people. Zach and I had a pretty good relationship for a little while. We're not nearly as close anymore for things that I won't get into now. Still have the utmost respect for the guy. We went different ways. Yeah, so I mean it's weird, and it hurt to just have this thing kind of show up and not even be considered for it. And again, none of this is Williams' fault at all. They are wonderful, amazing. They made an amazing video. This is my own insecurities that I'm just talking about. Along that realm of why I personally believe that I am at the same level as a Matt Colville or a Dale Kingsmill or even a Matt Mercer. The reason I believe that, to get rid of all the statistics, to be perfectly honest, there are three kinds of lies in this world: lies, damn lies, and statistics. I've gotten very good at knowing how to say things that sound very impressive in one way, but may not look very impressive in another. Things like I have thousands of hours of D&D experience, as in physically running and playing games. I have done thousands of hours. However, I didn't start playing D&D until the end of 4th edition, just before the D&D Next playtest launched in what, 2012, I want us to say? Something along those lines. It was 2012-ish. So I've been playing D&D for less than a decade. When you compare me to someone like Matt Mercer or Matt Colville, both of which have been playing for multiple decades, it seems kind of arrogant that I would claim that I could be on the same level as these guys where I have a fraction of the experience. And the reason that I personally believe that were I to be put on a podcast or a panel or something with them, I believe I could hold my own and provide insights and things that they wouldn't have, just like they could provide insights that I wouldn't have, is how I got into it and what I did to learn. And it's currently the way that I learned is not something you can do right now because of how the world is working. But if I guess is I was about to say when, but no, with how things are going, it may be an if. If you can do this, it is the most. It is, in my opinion, the absolute best way to learn Dungeons and Dragons or any other system. And the way that I learned how to play is I watched Tabletop, and I saw one of the episodes where the episode where they played the Dragon Age RPG. And I'd been interested in D&D for a little bit. I'd actually had a friend at one of the stores I worked at that had invited me, and I'd said, you know what, I prefer computer games to tabletop games because I'd never played it, and I didn't realize. I feel really bad that I gave him this huge spiel. I was like, yeah, it's nice, but I just don't like all the math and everything. And he was super, super nice. He's like, okay, that's fine. Just thought I'd offer. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. So what happened is I called up my friendly local game store and I said, hey, do you guys have like a D&D night? And they said, well, how does this sound? Why don't you come into the store? We're going to have a dude here on Wednesday, and he's thinking of starting an Encounters program. Talk to him and he can get you this started. And I said, will you guys have all the stuff I need to play there? Like if I need to buy the dice or something? He's like, oh yeah, we got dice. So I did. I came in and I met probably one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. He was my first DM. And Encounters was a program that they used to have in 4th edition where you would come in on Wednesday and you'd have these pre-written adventures that were designed to last about 2 hours, and they generally would have one social encounter and one combat encounter, you'd have all these different seasons that would last a couple of months, and you would start with a level 1 character and you generally get up to about level 5-ish. And that's what we got. And then the next one would come around and you could start over again. And it was a great infection vector for D&D 4th edition. So I talked to him and he said, yeah, come back next week. And I talked to a couple of the other people there. I actually found a friend of mine that I'd gone to elementary school with, whom I hadn't seen in close to a decade, because I had moved after elementary school, and I just saw her. Oh my God! Hey, how are you? And she's like, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a decade. And I'm like, yeah, totally. You here to play D&D? She's like, yeah. And so it was great. And then, because I was a huge fan of Acquisitions Incorporated, I started writing my own. Parody campaign called D&D High. If you go to, what was it called? Was it the Daily Elixir? Is that no? I think the channel was called the Daily Elixir. It was a collab channel that me and a couple other people tried to create. It crashed and burned. But I've got 2 seasons, or maybe even 3 seasons. I don't remember. I know 2 seasons specifically of this parody D&D campaign that I wrote that I was really, really proud of. And so I play tested it at the store once. It was the first time I'd really done any DMing for fourth edition. And from then on, my first dungeon master was not able to run as often, so I started running. And then I took over running all of the D&D encounters, which eventually became D&D Adventures League for that store, and started helping out at other stores. And then I met a local coordinator for the D&D Adventures League, and I became a local coordinator. And the way I met them was I went to a convention where, or I volunteer. The Friendly Local Game Store had a convention coming up, or convention had advertised in the store, and I picked up one, and I called them up, or I emailed them, I think. I said, hey, I'd like to run D&D, because they were looking for people to run. And I didn't hear back for a couple of months. And I said, hey, is this still happening? And the head of the convention said, I don't, the guy that's supposed to be running this for us isn't. So we'd love to have you, but we've no one to run, organize anything. I said, well, I'll do it. And so I got thrown in. The first time I organized for a convention, I had a month to pick the games we were going to play, find DMs for them, get everybody scheduled, make sure people were there. I met one of the greatest people in the world to this day that I've ever met. His name's John Connor Self. And I started doing what I called the convention circuit. In Wisconsin, where I live, D&D was born here. We used to have tons of D&D conventions, of board game conventions in general, but D&D was at every single one of them. And so for like 3 or 4 years, I would do the convention circuit where I would take a weekend and I would agree. And if you've never done conventions, this is a super, super easy way to get involved in conventions. Find out whoever is running their organized play, whatever. You can do Pathfinder. You can do D&D Adventures League, Shadowrun. Used to have an organized play campaign. Contact whoever does that. Say, hey, I'd like to run games for you. And generally the way that it works is if you run a set number of games, anywhere between about 4 to 8 over the weekend, depending on the convention, they will generally give you a ticket for free. So you don't have to pay to get into the convention. And if you run enough, you can negotiate getting a spot in a hotel room, because they will have hotel rooms that they can use for guests and things like that. And so I would do anywhere between about 3 to 6 conventions a year, where I would run anywhere between about like 4 to 6, sometimes closer to 8, D&D adventures over the length of a weekend. And I would get to travel to this convention. I'd get to stay there. I'd have a hotel and everything like that sometimes. Some of the closer ones, I'd just drive out every day. And I do nothing but play D&D and sleep for anywhere between 72 to 96 hours. Because some conventions are 3 days, some conventions are for 4 days. And over that period of time, and running games at my friendly local game store and that, I met literally thousands of different D&D players, and I got to play with them. And every single kind of D&D player. I dealt with min-maxers, I dealt with brand new players, I dealt with people that had played with Gary Gygax. That's one of the things that you will that will happen if you ever go to a Wisconsin convention, is, and it's getting a little bit more rare now just because they're getting old, but every so often you will have someone that goes, oh, I played with Gygax. And I've met, I think I've met Luke, because we both were running at conventions, and he's a really, really nice guy. He's Gary Gygax's son. Yeah, so because I played with so many different kinds of players, and the Adventure League specifically was perfect for this, because everyone's characters were not built to be a party. Everyone's characters is built so they could take it to all these different adventures. Most people play a lot of different characters. And so what would happen is I got exposed to every kind of play style imaginable very, very quickly. And because I am a trainer, and a good one, I also understand how to train myself. And so whenever I would sit down and I would have someone doing something that I was not used to, my goal was always to learn as much as I could from this person. Even if they were a quote unquote problem player, they were a that guy, I would learn everything I could from them. From the combos that they used on the board to the things that they got happy about, the things that they didn't like, how the other players reacted to them. And again, within 3 or 4 years, I got over 1,000 hours of D&D in because I was constantly playing. And I was able to do that while working a full-time job. It was rough every so often, but it happened. So because of that, yes, I am, as far as age-wise, as far as being into the D&D, I am a relatively young pup. Like I said, I've been doing this for less than a decade. But with the sheer volume of experiences I've had, and not just running the D&D, but running for every single different kind of person I possibly could. I've experienced more than most 20 and 30-year DMs. I'm not saying you can't be a really, really successful DM if you only ever DM for your friends and family and the things like that. But running at conventions with strangers or running online with strangers, but anytime you are running pick up and play games where you don't know what they're bringing, they don't know what you're bringing, and you kind of have to meet and work together to have fun right there at the table, is the absolute best experience you can have if you want to become competent and move towards becoming an expert on this as a subject. Now I'm to the point where I've been doing this for so long, and doing things like D&D Deep Dive has helped a lot, and designing my own class has helped a lot, where I can look at a class and pick apart the things that are going to work for it, the things that aren't going to work. And in general, I tend to be fairly good with what does and doesn't work at the table because I have seen it physically work at the table countless times. And in addition to running and playing all this, I also was a part of the local coordinators, and I used to have a list of DMs that I knew personally, that knew me personally, that I literally, most of them I didn't have telephone numbers for, so I couldn't call them up. But I could shoot them an email and go, hey, I need DMs for this date for these times, and get slots filled instantly. Again, the first time I did it, I didn't have these contact lists, and I got, I think, 50 or 60 some odd tables filled in a month. It got to the point when I started recruiting for things, I would start recruiting 3 to 6 months before the event, because that was a lot easier, and I could have most of my games filled within a couple of weeks. So in addition to doing all this stuff, I know a lot of DMs that do what I call the convention circuit. And not just in Wisconsin. They would go all the way down through Illinois, down to Indiana, to Indianapolis, to Gen Con. They would go to things like PAX and Winter Fantasy. We actually have 2 relatively big conventions in Wisconsin still. We have GaryCon, which is named after Gary Gygax, and Gamehole Con, which is partnered with Wizards of the Coast quite a few times. Chris Perkins comes down almost every year, specifically for Gamehole Con, and I believe he used to be coming to GaryCon. I don't know if he does anymore. But both of those conventions would get personal appearances by Wizards of the Coast staff members. So yeah, I am constantly inundated with information about D&D just from talking with other people and my own experiences. I still run. I'm running 3 different campaigns currently. One of them is not D&D; it's Open Legend, but yeah, and then every so often I will just run one-offs into the things like that to train new players or for stuff for D&D deep dive and none of that. So, yes, if you want to become a really, really good D&D DM, D&D player, the absolute best training you can get is do the convention circuit any way you can. You will. It is rough. I would at the convention I helped run, where I eventually was in charge of all organized play for the convention. So not only Adventures League, but also Shadowrun missions and and Pathfinder Society (PFS). I would wake up roughly around 6ish, 7 o'clock. Really quick, get something to eat, and then from 8 a.m. till roughly around midnight to 2 a.m. The next day, I would be doing D&D stuff. I would be in the D&D room, or I would be going to the Pathfinder room, or be going to the Shadowrun room to make sure everything was running. It was arduous. It was rough on me. The last year I did it, I because my health was deteriorating very very quickly. I would basically check in at the beginning of every time slot, and then I would have to go back up to my room and hide because I couldn't handle being in public that much. So it is not a comfortable thing to do. It takes a lot of endurance and stamina, but it is oh so rewarding. Some of the best memories I've ever had have been D&D games that started at 10 o'clock at night and went until 3 in the morning. And crazy stuff is, and we're drinking and having a blast, or chilling after everything is done and I'm organizing the paperwork and just chilling with some of my other DM buddies and trading stories about the stuff that happened at our tables, or playing just random card games and stuff in the middle of an empty hotel auditorium at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like it was some of the best experiences of my life happened at these conventions. And if I could do it for a living, if I could do anything for a living, I would. But if I could do it for a living, I 100% would. It was amazing and wonderful. And because of it, I am really, really knowledgeable. Again, I personally believe that if a Ask the DM panel happened and the people that were going to be on that panel were Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, what's his name? Mark Holmes, something like that, and me, I would be able to hold my and Chris Perkins. Got to have Chris Perkins on there. I would be able to sit there and answer questions and come up with ideas into the things like that no one else on the panel could come up with, and I would come away looking like I was just as experienced as all these other people, because I personally believe I am. Maybe not Chris Perkins, because he's been doing this almost longer than I've been alive. But yeah, I personally believe I'm at that level. The quality of my content here doesn't reflect that for a number of reasons. But yeah, I think I'm at that level. I hope people view me like that. Again, I have friends that have told me, wow, you're the best DM I've ever proposed. And they're my friends. I kind of expect them to say nice things about me. But yeah, I putting this out into the universe, I want one day to sit on a panel with the Matts and Mark and Chris and be able to just talk about D&D. I want one day for someone to go, hey, we want to try and do a new live play show. Who do we think or we want to do a live parade limited series, who do we think we should get to DM it? Oh, you know who I'd love to have in? Trainer Jody. That would be amazing for me. And other than the fact that health wise, I can't physically do like a whole series. Like I would never be able to run, let's say, on Critical Role, simply because I can't physically get out there, and I probably couldn't commit to more than maybe a month ish or two of sessions. But that would be something that I want to happen eventually, for people to think, oh, D&D, who should we get? Oh, Trainer Jody. Or for people at a convention to be going, okay, we're going to have a DMs panel, or, you know, for a podcast that does D&D stuff, to go, hey, we're going to have a bunch of DMs on. Let's make sure we get Trainer Jody and Mercer and Perkins and Colville. I want to be that person, to be blunt. Again, I understand paying my dues wise, I haven't quite earned that yet. But I think knowledge wise, I easily am at that point. So, if you've made it this far in the video, go check out William SRD's stuff. He does some really cool stuff. I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of his content because of the aforementioned anxiety. I haven't been able to watch much of anything all day. Like, I cannot focus. I can't play games. I can't watch anything. It has not been fun. For a couple days now. It's been horrible. But go check out his stuff. It's super cool. Watch the specific video. I'll have a link to to his video he made, the Critter's Guide to D&D YouTube. Check it out. Because almost every single one of the channels on there are channels that I personally have watched and enjoyed. And I'm not going to tell you which ones I don't, because that's just mean. But go ahead and check that stuff out. It's really, really cool. Ginny D is another person that he mentioned. Who, if you're not familiar with Ginny D, she is amazing. Ginny D pisses me off, to be perfectly honest. But because she got kind of famous because she could mimic Laura Bailey's Jester accent really well, and she is a brilliant cosplayer. So that's how she became really big in critter circles. But that is such a tiny bit of the amazing amount of things that she can do. She's a brilliant vocalist and singer, and just musician in general. She's unbelievably creative. She has a wonderful wealth of knowledge about D&D in general. And the creative things that she does. Like, my favorite thing that Ginny has ever done is she wrote a parody to Not That Girl from Wicked, which is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful song, full of emotion. It's one of my favorite songs from the show because it's such a motivator for the character of Elphaba, and it is one of those songs that doesn't get the recognition that it does, but because it doesn't involve Elphaba singing crazy Idina Menzel crazy notes, but it is the heart of her character, and it's so beautiful. And so she wrote a parody of it from the perspective of Not the Brave from Campaign 2 Critical Role. And the writing is beautiful and poignant. The singing itself is phenomenal. She has an amazing voice, wonderful control, really great instincts, and musicality. Like, she's really, really brilliant. And then the video itself is just so well done. So yes, Ginny pisses me off because she's amazing. everything, and she needs to not be, because it makes me feel insecure. And by that I mean keep being amazing, Ginny, if you ever watch this. But anyway, yeah, go check out William's stuff. He's actually a smaller YouTuber than I am currently. That will not be that very long. I will guarantee you, return to this video in a month, then check out his channel, and he will have surpassed my subscriptions. I will guarantee it. And he 100% deserves it, because he's making great content. But check his stuff out. Whenever the madness that has gripped the world ends, go to a convention. Seriously, preferably go to a local convention. Things like Gen Con and PAX and things like that are experiences. But to be blunt, they're not going to miss you. But if you find a local convention nearby, every single ticket can mean the difference between the convention returning the next year. And you will meet so many amazing, wonderful people, and you will learn. You will learn so much. Remember to keep your mind open. And even when you meet that guy who will be at the convention, along with all of his that guy friends and that girl friends, they are not locked to a gender identity. Remember that as much as it may be an unpleasant experience, you're about to learn a lot in a very short amount of time. So cherish the experience. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm upset that people don't know about me more, because I think I should be more viewed than I am, and a lot of the reasons I'm not are entirely my own fault. And go to conventions. There really, really are amazing, wonderful places, and you will form memories that you'll never forget. Anyway, that's all for me. See you guys next time. All right. Bye-bye.